Hi there, this is Mark Schiff, the podcast You Don't Know Schiff. That's me, Mark Schiff, podcast You Don't Know Schiff. And we have my co-host with me, the very wonderful, I don't know, I've said so many nice things about you. Maybe I'll just trim it with that. The very wonderful, the very nice, the very friendly Will Benjamin.
Hello, Mark. You already started laughing without me. What's going on? Is there an
I
inside
know.
joke?
You know, when I see you, I just want to say nice things. You're one of those things. People that I just feel happy when I see you.
Oh my gosh, that's.
I told you
very
about my
nice.
friend who gave that. My friend Jonas Hanlon.
You did, but why don't you go ahead? If you insist, you can tell the audience what
So
you
I
said.
have a friend Jonas Hanlon who I've written about. He actually has written a couple of comedy ideas for me that I've done in my act. And Jonas says to me, he's a friend, but he goes, "Listen, I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything, but I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of the podcast, but it's really Lowell's voice that I'm in love with. He loves your voice. Now, don't let it go to your head. He's a married man for many years. He has a lot of children, so
He's very
just saying a nice thing to you.
Sure.
He's not going to go any further than that.
Yes.
He's not taking you to dinner. He's not buying you a new headset.
Maybe he'll give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, which anyone who's enjoying the podcast can do. There's no cost to that.
I think he'd be very happy to get rid of me and just to have you. You should do those sleep white noise.
Yes.
Sleep YouTube videos.
Yeah. No, what's funny is because I tell my daughter, my youngest, I tell her bedtime stories, and I tell intentionally boring stories because I want her to go to sleep.
Sure.
And so the other day, my wife was in the room at the time I was telling the story, and it drove her insane. She was like holding her head. She's like, "I can't listen to that. It's so annoying." So it's some people like it.
Not according to
some people...
Jonas Hanlon. Not according to Jonas Hanlon. So today on You Don't Know Schiff, the podcast, which you're very much involved in, you're the anchor of the podcast. You're the voice of the podcast. We have a guy coming on, Hiram Kasten. Yep. Originally Hiram Kasten Baum, I believe. He tightened it up to get rid of, it's too Jewish, I guess, Kasten Baum, but he didn't get rid of Hiram. It's like
it's a Baum.
Moshe Greenberg. Oh, let's fix up Greenberg, but we'll keep Moshe. Nobody will know that that's a Jewish thing, Moshe.
Try to sneak that one through.
Hiram is actually one of the most Jewish guys I've ever met, and I don't mean just religiously at all. He's got the Jewish neshama, the Jewish soul, and he was born to entertain. He's a pure entertainer, not just a stand-up comedian,
right?
But he's an entertainer and a TV personality. He's been on tons of sitcoms. When you see him, you hear him, you'll recognize the voice, and he's always a hit.
Yeah. He's a stand-up comedian, he's an actor, and he's a performer. He performed in Vegas for many years. And some of the shows that he's been on has been on Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Mad About You, Men of a Certain Age, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and a ton more.
So he's been on a ton of shows, and he's a wonderful guy, and he's married. He's got a daughter, Millicent. So this is going to be 2 parts, right?
Yeah, 2 parts. And this was, it was a fun interview. He's a very frank, candid person and very nice, and has a lot of great stories about, working on Seinfeld and Mad About You and Curb Your Enthusiasm. So this was a lot of fun. I hope everyone enjoys.
He's a bit of a raconteur. Is that it?
Sure.
Story guy. And one night we talk about it. We went to Vegas. I went with Jerry Seinfeld, Larry Miller, Paul Reiser, and Michael Richards. And we all went to Vegas to see Hiram in the Rat Pack. He played comedian Joey Bishop in the Rat Pack show in Vegas. He had a long run there. I think a year or 2. He was on stage every night in Vegas. So
I like the way you say
anyway,
Vegas.
I don't want to keep these people, waiting for this great episode.
And we'll talk again right after part 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy. As usual, we have a, I say this a lot, that we have a friend, who's going to be speaking with us today. But this guy I truly know forever. I got to say forever. Since I was reborn, which meant my comedy beginnings. I met this guy, Hiram Kasten, and he's here with us today. And Hiram? Hello, sir.
Hello there.
Good to see you. I found him. I found him. Wandering around the streets in a tent.
He's like your wheelman now, right?
He is. I had to have a young guy. Listen, who's going to watch
Yeah,
two old Jews talking?
that's right.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
whatever.
I got a young guy. Look at his skin. Look at Lowell's skin. Look how nice and white
Are
and
you
fair.
kidding? I got my own skin to look at. You look at your skin. That's the problem. Look at me. You didn't say how good I look for a man in
You
my condition and my age. Are you
you do.
kidding?
You look almost the same. A little tired, but
Oh,
what can I tell you?
I was fighting with a microphone for an hour. Steve Middleman came to town last week. You've had him on the show?
Steve Middleman?
Yes.
Not yet.
Okay. So we were talking, catching up on things. He was in town. We went to breakfast. The guy can't eat anything. He's worse than you. Now, you're a vegetarian all the way.
I'm a
He
vegan.
just,
He's a vegan, but he's really he's a psycho vegan.
I thought you were a psycho vegan. All right. Well, he's psycho vegan. We found a breakfast place like where truck drivers were. It was like a truck stop. And they made very big pancakes. He says, I can't eat that. He says, you have a bowl of oatmeal. The woman said, yes. But she looked at him and, okay, they gave him it. And I don't know. We were talking, we catching up on things. He's got a new face. You remember that from years ago? He
Yeah,
went
he
on a
had
TV
plastic
show.
surgery by one of the top reconstruction guys in the world.
It was a show on ABC, though. So you want a new face or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, he had $80,000 worth of plastic
That's
surgery.
unbelievable because I'm looking at him. I don't see 80,000, but I said, you got a great new face, but you know what? Same small dick.
There you go.
What do you
That's the
know?
guy. That's the guy. So, yeah, Steve is also a
You
friend of mine.
almost laughed, Chef. You almost laughed.
I was the best man at his wedding.
Yeah, how'd that go?
Not very well. So,
Chef and I have the same rabbi. The rabbi says, don't, rabbi told Chef, you never play that card, the divorce card. Don't put that card on the table when you're married. Don't speak of it. And he's 100% right. And I do that with my wife. Only now that I have nothing and I'm living up near Buffalo and I'm freezing and, the health is fading. I have no business anymore. And she says, why don't you get out? I said, is that like a divorce? No, but doesn't your wife say that sometimes? Why don't you get out, go somewhere?
yeah, she does.
But when you were younger, she didn't say that.
No.
Because
My
you would
wife
have gone out
goes
more.
into a room and she closes the door, and I'm not allowed to go in there when she's in there. So that's her. She knows I'm
Yeah,
not going anywhere, so she
that's,
closes the door, and then
my
she
wife
locks
goes
us.
up, closes the door, and doesn't say goodnight. Oh, I want to say something. I'm married. Am I married longer than you? I'm married almost 37 years.
Yes, you are,
Okay,
and you look
37
it.
years. And people ask me if it's, what do you say? What do you
Yeah.
say? It was like prisoner of war. People look at you like you're a prisoner of war. The Hanoi
Marriage
Hilton.
does that to you. Lowell's laughing because he has no idea what's in store for him,
No,
what he's going to look like.
no,
You
I
think
don't.
we look bad, Lowell?
I don't. He keeps saying that
Forget
one
about what
day.
you're going to look like.
I don't think I look bad, but I'm looking at Schiff with I don't know what these glasses are, Tina Sinatra glasses, or whatever you're doing. I don't know what it is. He's laughing. See, because if it doesn't make sense, then he laughs. He's an absurdist. You can't try to make sense. So anyway, they asked me, has it changed between you and Diana? 37 years. I said, well, a little change. When we go to say goodnight now, her handshake isn't as firm. 3, 4. Okay, if I
Wow,
gotta wait
that's
for a laugh from that kid, forget it. All right, can everybody see me, folks? They got me in the studio here, the Hanoi Hilton. I can't be seen. Well, they don't have light up here. I'm up near Buffalo. You guys so lucky to be in Los Angeles. I envy you. On the
right.
worst day out there.
How does a Jew from the Bronx
Potato.
and I was in your Bronx apartment. How does a Jew
Yes.
from the Bronx end up at the game capital of the world, Buffalo?
Well, I'm not even there. I'm in a suburb of Buffalo, a little town called Batavia. There are 15 Jews in maybe 15,000 people. That's the truth, because I know all of them. And this one schmucko gave out my name to 2 yeshiva buchas who were passing through from Buffalo. They came to Batavia with big hats on, looking to recruit. Recruit. I saw them crossing the street to my house because I have a big mezuzah on my door. So they were directed by someone, go see him. He's a big Jew. Go see him. Right? So they go, and we get into a conversation, wasted time, but we're talking. And One of the young guys says, well, maybe you'd like to help start a new Chabad here in Batavia. I said, me? You want me to start it? I'm watching you across the street. I'm afraid you're going to get killed before you get to my side of the street. And you want me to start it? So I just said this guy, he's laughing, but he's hiding behind the microphone. But so I said, would you like a water, individual water, Fiji water? It's got a hexture on it. It's closed, tight. Yes, thank you. They sit down. They don't understand that I know hexture, I know mezuzah, and I know them, but I don't know anything.
Right.
This is the problem I have with a little to the far right. They don't get it. So I said to him, you'll appreciate this, Mark. I said to them, one kid was from Australia, the other was from Buffalo. The kid from Buffalo had the usual look, pale with pimples, And he said, I said, look, you've got to, I'm trying to tell you, I'm not just a culinary Jew. I don't just eat bagels. I actually have a kosher home. I actually do. I'm just not considered Orthodox for little reasons like a steering wheel. But otherwise, I am a Jewish, observant person, spiritual, believe in God. And they're looking at me like it's just a freak show. They're looking at me. Why is he saying these words? I had a Orthodox rabbi in L.A. say to me, you're using the right words, Kasten. Really? Okay, maybe because I know what I'm doing. I was a gabbai in my shul. Okay, so anyway, fine. So I said, listen, you got to find the Jews that need to be helped to get closer to their maker. And then I told him the story when I first got to L.A. It'd be very quick. Jeannie, our friend Jeannie McBride, catch the name? Jeannie
Yes.
McBride was throwing a dinner for Rosh Hashanah. And Diana and I went, and we were going to go to shul from there. So we stopped in to say hello, right? And we get up to leave early because we want to make the service. And George Shapiro, who just passed away, Jerry's manager, and was Dennis Wolfberg's manager too. And he comes up to me and goes, where you going? Where you going? And I said, I'm going to shul now. He goes, you do that shul thing? You do that shul thing? Yeah, I do that shul thing. I said, this guy handles, so I say to the kid with the big hat, this guy handles Jerry Seinfeld. Can you believe that? And the kid says to me, who is Jerry Seinfeld?
Right, of course. I had a similar thing. I was eating at this very religious guy's house on a
How
Shabbos.
religious was he?
Very religious guy in New York, and we were eating on his balcony. His wife, a couple
He has
people.
money, in other words.
So he says to me,
What a surprise.
so you're a comedian. So I said, yes. He goes, do you know Don Wrinkles? I said, who? Don Wrinkles. I said, you mean Rickles? I said, you know Rickles? You mean Rickles? He goes, no, Wrinkles. And that was that guy.
I heard this story. It's
So
a
a pleasure to see you. Let's
yeah, good to see you.
yeah. So let's go back for a couple of minutes here
Yes,
too.
let's go back to the beginning.
Let's go back to where you started, the Bronx.
The Bronx, like you.
I don't know why I can't remember. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I had a sister.
She passed.
An older sister passed, yes.
Right, I remember that
All
now.
she
Okay.
did was good. She was a teacher in the South Bronx for kindergarten. Very nice. So, God wasn't busy that day, so,
I
called her
understand.
up. But you know how I believe. I'm 1-on-1 with the big guy. And sometimes,
That's something about you. You and I,
Yeah.
for all our
Yes.
comedy and everything we do,
Yeah.
we always go back to, a lot of times we go back to our creator, talking about God.
Always.
As always.
And I talked to him 1-on-1. And when my wife is a righteous convert, when she studied with a rabbi from Borough Park, this is serious stuff. He went on to head the Beth Din in Chicago. And he looked at me, he said, you could use a refresher course too. Why don't you come in every Tuesday too? And he was right, because I couldn't tell Shavuos from Sukkot at that point. I was a wild comedian, So he straightened me out. And she blew out 3 stoves already, wherever we've lived. And yet the Orthodox don't look at, you're no good, you're no good. So, but she envies me because I can talk directly to the big guy. And she was told by that rabbi she studied with, you cannot. You got to take out that siddur and only read the prayers. No, I said, Diana, listen to the rabbi, but in time you'll realize that if he's omnipresent and everything, you could do absolutely anything you want to within reason. Talk to him. But I remember the rabbi saying, you can't go in and say, hi, God, like that. And, as a matter of fact, I believe you can.
So were you raised to believe that, or did you sort of evolve to get
I was
there?
raised to be a big Jew. Kosher home, Jewish, never went anywhere. Did not eat Chinese food because we didn't have a car. So it was absolutely nothing. Poor, the Bronx. And then you look back down, I'm on these sites on the computer, remember when, and the Bronx. And it just was such a happy time because it was, now I'm not remembering being beaten up. I'm not remembering anything. I'm remembering it was a Jewish borough, Mark, when we were kids. It was
Right, our
3/4
area for
Jewish.
sure.
And the West Bronx, where we were, the West Bronx was all Jewish. The East Bronx is more Italian.
No, where I lived in the Bronx, I lived off of the Grand Concourse, Crescent and Burnside for a while, and we'd go into the stores, and all the stores were Jews that made it out of the concentration camps.
Oh, my
They'd
God.
be slicing on a machine a little pastrami, and you could see the numbers on their wrist.
Oh,
They were all over the place.
and you played them, right?
Yeah, I played those numbers, right? Was that the joke?
Yes. That's
Yeah, the lottery joke. I always like that. Yeah. So yeah, very Jewish area.
very Jewish.
So your parents,
Well, Burnside was 2 subway stops up from me. My big stop was 170th. But we were west, unless I'm wrong, you were West Bronx, west of the concourse.
everything for our childhood, Lowell, was how many subway stops or how many bus stops.
Oh, yeah.
And we knew the number of the subway and the number of the bus.
Right, right. Well,
I was like 8 taking buses by myself.
It's in my blood. It's so much a part of. I join these things online because someone throws up. You remember the little thing in the New York Post, the square that told you all the movie theaters, what was playing, on that one little thing. Somebody just posted it for the hell of it, and I wanted to break down crying because that's why isn't life as simple as that? And every day it's Alexander's. Everyone posts. That was the department store up by us. Folks, can anybody see me, by the way? I'm over here.
Yeah, we can see you perfectly. Don't worry. We can see you. We can hear you. By the way, I was at Alexander's, and Neil Sedaka, he was in he was in his prime at the time, probably making a lot of money.
Very well.
Had hit songs. Alexander's used to have these big bins where you matched a shoe. Like you had one shoe and you had to find the other one that was matched to it. And I saw Neil Sedaka digging through trying to find a $2 shoe.
You know how many millions he had, Lowell? Oh.
Yeah.
But that's because he was a Jew from the Bronx, and that's.
But didn't you say he called the manager over because he wanted help?
Yeah. He was desperate to find this other shoe, this other $3
so he never
shoe.
forgot being poor, I guess.
That's
As opposed to our friend Jerry, who the big mistake he could make is mentioning money. Don't even mention it. I go out to eat with him. I used to it's like my turn. Like I make like I'm going in my pocket. You ever do that move with friends?
Yeah, of course.
He goes, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. Okay, I won't.
I was with him the other day. We were working in Texas, and we were having lunch, and I knew it was going to be an inexpensive meal. It was this Indian restaurant, and we didn't go there because it was inexpensive. And I thought maybe I should pay for this one because it's not going to be more than $40.
Every now and then.
Yeah, and
well, you should anyway, every now and then.
I do. I went into Starbucks with him, and he ordered something, and I said, "I'll take care of this."
Wow. I was on the road with him once, and I slipped my hand around the table and got the breakfast check, and I picked up the check. They didn't even know it until the girls pointed to me, and they went, "Oh, I think he's the first one to do that." Didn't help me get too much more work, but it's always good to give it a shot. For the money I was making, what's $25? Which brings us to the dermatologist on Park Avenue.
we can tell that story. You want to tell it?
No.
So let me set it up. I went to a dermatologist, and he took something off of me, and
$30.
Yeah, and I was waiting for the results. I didn't get the results, and I called him up, and he said, you haven't paid me yet, so you don't get the results. So I'm waiting to find out if I have cancer.
Said that.
Yeah. I'm waiting to find out if I have cancer. And he goes, give me $30. So unless you send me the 30, I'm not giving you the results. So I hung up on him.
That?
Now take it from there.
Doctor.
Now take it from there.
Okay. A year or so later, I need I was going to say a gynecologist. I need a dermatologist.
There's a difference, Hiram. There's a big difference.
Well, with me, So I said, do you have one? He says, yeah, well, Park Avenue. And I said, I don't know if I can afford it. He says, hey, when you have no money, only the best. You go to only the best. And I went in, and a nice man. And it was a pee-pee problem, little pee-pee problem. So I got to drop the pants. Yeah, I've been doing that more and more at doctors these last few years, Drop the pants. And he's feeling around there, What did Wolfberg say? Fiddling and fiddling. So just a little too much touching, but all right, he's the doctor. All right, he has a white coat on. It says MD, me doctor, So he's touching me, and then he's got the whole unit. I think the kids call it the junk.
Yeah,
he's got the junk in his hand. And then he says to me, by the way, what do you do for a living? I says, I'm a comedian. And he goes, do you know Mark Schiff?
He's got your sack in his hand.
My whole package. And I said, yeah. And he starts to squeeze his hand a little bit, Oh. I say you should surprise. He might be dead already, but send him something.
So
Say,
yeah,
I wouldn't embarrass you, doctor. I made it in your name. I planted a tree.
I think he said the way that ended was he was kind of squeezing you there, and he says, Mark owes me $30. That was
it wasn't 30. First of all, it was like 100.
Yeah, whatever it was. But I got upset. I probably.
I know you're thinking on this. You were right.
You
couldn't have had cancer because he wouldn't have said, "I'm not telling you."
That's right.
You were smart. You thought it out. Just a little sideline. I don't think I ever told you this. My father met me downtown. When you're from the Bronx, Manhattan was downtown for your whole life. And we went, and he went with me to the Park Avenue doctor because to my father, who was like poorer than me, I know he never went to a Park Avenue doctor, And my father was kind of cute. He wore that hat like Oscar Madison wore, like Jack Klugman in The Odd Couple with the feather, the hat. And he had a big mustache and holding an unlit cigar. And the next time I went into the doctor, he says, your father, was he a poet? I said, a poet? He's a kosher butcher. This is true. So anyway, I'm up here. It's cold. Oh, God.
So could I ask you, how did you get the name Hiram? Because as someone named Lowell, I find I spend an inordinate amount of time explaining my name, and I'm assuming you have that same problem.
I have that, but it's got, unfortunately, I'm very proud of being Jewish. Everybody knows that. But it's not a Jewish name. It's an Old Testament name. He was not Jewish, Hiram, but he helped King Solomon build the temple. Okay. But people see it and they think it's Hiram or Jaime or Hyman or Hacham. And then they say to me, I was driving into a gate to go do a network TV show. And the guard, this moron, just goes, hey, what part of Israel are you from? It's not even a fucking Jewish name. I used to do this in my act. I can name you 15 Hirams off the top of my head. Famous. Jack Dempsey's father, Hiram Dempsey. Hiram Fong, the first senator of Hawaii. Not one of them is Jewish, but I say Hiram, and they go, what part of the Negev are you from?
Right.
So Lowell's a different story. I knew Lowell. I knew that name. People aren't educated anymore.
Yeah, anyone who's not from the East Coast has no clue.
But Lowell there was a Senator Lowell Weicker, right, Mark?
Yes. And
there's a city in Massachusetts, but anyone who's from the West Coast has no clue.
Yeah, well, they're a little slow.
There's a comedian, Lowell Sanders.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know him.
And then
I know how to make him laugh. But I never had problems. The thing was, I grew up on Clark Place, a street in the Bronx, right by the L, the number 4, right off.
Explain what the L is, dude.
The elevated train.
Right.
Okay, everybody. And so you actually heard it all the time, but you got used to it. You never heard it anymore. And when relatives would come over to stay, I don't know where we put them. It was a one-room apartment. I don't know who's sleeping over, but I had a cousin come over and he says, "How do you sleep? Every 10 minutes there's a train going by rumbling." I said, "I don't even hear it anymore."
So Hiram, you had you say you
Yeah.
forget the bad stuff from your child. Good. I'm getting your.
I thought this the other day. No, I say prayers every day, but as I've gotten older, when I'm talking directly, it's more in English than in Hebrew because I want to communicate.
Did you go to Hebrew school? Did you go
I went to
to?
Talmud Torah, after school Hebrew school. I did not go to yeshiva like you, but I challenge anybody to read Hebrew as well as I do. I've told you that. That's why I was a gabbai in my shul in L.A. for 20 years. And every Saturday, up in the morning, up, dressed, up. Oh, he drives, no good. You do what you want to do. I'm very close to it. I stood by an open Torah every Shabbos. Oh, I got one for you. Wait, this is good. I want you to see this. We'll see if this picks up on the camera. Can you read that?
Insurance something?
Is it backwards?
No.
All right. Well, anyway,
what does it say?
It's a church, a Catholic church. And I know they're not collecting from me. And a couple of months ago, my wife's in Florida with my daughter, Mrs. Solomon, we call her. And they're down there, and a very dear uncle of hers died. So I represent the family. I like them too. So I went. I'm always the only one, the only Hebrew in that church. So everybody's hanging. Everybody's hanging up on the thing, you know. It's okay. The only thing, I hope they understand why I'm not getting on my knees. That's all. If they can cope with that, they could have me in that church. But it's a dead giveaway immediately. I was in a church when my mother-in-law died a few years ago, and I was in the front row. I was getting up to do the eulogy, and Diana gives me one of these, like, "Okay, get up now." And I get up, and the priest was very short. And as I get up, perfect timing, he's coming in with the wafer. He's coming in with the wafer right here, 12 o'clock high. And I know the definition of the word tight-lipped.
There you go.
I was like that. Well, anyway, so I'm leaving this church a few weeks ago, and I haven't been walking that well, sad to say, but I tried to hold on to the rail and whatnot. I thought there was another step. There wasn't. Normally, you just hit the floor after missing a step, but I got all famished, and I fell directly on my face on the sidewalk, very cold sidewalk in Batavia. And I want to help. Immediately, you want help. You want your mother. You want somebody who's not alive anymore. Somebody help me. I'm flat, and I mean flat. I broke the fall with my face, and I went, "Help, help," but nothing was coming out. So I crawled back in the church on the side. I knew where the kitchen was. Got to get to that kitchen where there's toweling and ice, and then they found me. All right, fade out today. I got a letter from the Diocese of Buffalo Insurance Service. I said, "Well, I hope they're not asking me for money. I fell in that. They're trying to protect themselves." And they said that if I could fill out the form, any expense that I incurred from this, they'd be happy to pay. Now, I didn't incur any expense. So I figured rather than try to make something up, which I would have done most of my life, now I could be the big shot who says, "No, don't be silly. It was my fault." The guy who doesn't sue, the guy who doesn't ask for money, because that's what's wrong in our society today. Everybody. And look at the pharmacies, the doctors. It's a wheel. They're all
Right.
in a thing. But anyway, so he sent me a thing. I'm just going to write them a little note. Don't worry about it. But between you and I wanted to say, that's all I need to do. The only Jew in town, sue the Catholic Church.
That's right. That's right. So Hiram, your family was not in show business, I'm sure.
No, Coach.
How did you? Did your mother take you to plays? How did you find your way into show business?
No, television, TV. TV was our, vaudeville or, whatever it was. I didn't get to the theater on my own until I made my father take me to play at 14. And it was a play called It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman.
I remember
And
that.
Linda Lavin was very young. She played one of the singing girls in the show. 40 years later, I'm opening for her in Florida. I got a lot of stories like this. I'm announcing on your show for the first time. I am finally going to write a book.
Okay.
Because I am so bothered by my family. It says, if you just wrote every person you met, but I tend to want to tell them the whole story, like growing up and what it was like. But people say, no, we don't want to read that. We want to hear about how you know Jerry Lewis and how you know. So I don't know. I haven't read your book yet, but didn't you deal with also
Yeah.
the places you've been and the people you've
Yeah.
Didn't you spend time describing how you grew up?
Yeah. Read the friggin' book. Don't bother me.
I'm on a
Okay.
fixed income.
Yeah.
All right.
You're on a fixed-dent income.
Which shows were the ones that you remember sort of
My
helping
shows
you?
growing
You
up, or the
said
ones I
TV
got on?
shows. Yeah, you said like TV shows you watched that helped get you into comedy.
Oh, Christ. I watched TV a lot when my grades were very bad all the time. With Mark, to answer your question, I knew I wanted to be somewhere in show business at least by 5 years old or 7 years old. And I don't know why. And substitute teacher came in once in fourth grade. So what's the age? 8 years old, maybe something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, take your books off your table, take out a piece of paper and a pen. They always said that. She says, write down what you want to be when you grow up, and don't write astronaut or actor. Because after all, why should an 8-year-old dream?
Right.
All dreaming must end in the public school system in the Bronx. Am I correct? It's a penitentiary.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to. I got in trouble once for just trying to be funny during a fire drill. Oh, that's a big no-no.
The worst.
You know how Robert Klein always said, single file, no talking?
Burn in order.
Yeah, right. I want an orderly Holocaust.
Yeah, you will burn in Si's place.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, they're marching. These little Nazis are just marching without a thought in their head. And then I stopped and I started walking backwards. As they were going forwards, I was marching backwards to impress some girl. And I stopped when I hit into the dean of boys. And then this woman came out and she said, you're going to stay after school every day for the entire term. So I went home. This is why my daughter calls this now white man's privilege. Excuse me, I'm a Jew. I'd rather you say Jewish white man, but all right. Or white Jew. But otherwise, it's white man's privilege. Somebody else, they call your parents, and you got parents. They come in, they stick up for you. My mother came in and said, he has Hebrew school every day after school. So they changed it. They let me go. But it was really, they were just, here. You remember the guidance counselors?
Of course.
Useless.
Do I remember them? I knew them by first name.
Well, you were in trouble a lot, right?
A lot.
Yeah, it was just useless.
So, Hiram, when you talk about show business, I've never met a guy who was more suited as a raconteur, that should be, have a part in show business than you. You are such
an entertainer, by the way.
Yeah, but you're such a natural in every sense.
You saw me in Vegas in that show, by the way.
I did. We'll talk about that show.
Okay.
But
yes, it's in my blood. I guess.
It's in your blood. It was born in you, and you were lucky to find it.
Yes, I had my hair cut recently in Batavia, and a young woman said, well, you're very lucky. I hate you. I said, what do you hate me for? She says, because you knew what you wanted to do with your life, and I never did. I said, well, don't hate me. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful.
So did you want to go into stand-up or acting, or where did you want to go first? Because you do a lot of things.
It was never stand-up, but comedy appealed to me because those are the people I saw on TV. Mm-hmm. They were basically comedians, but I mean, everybody I know, they said they loved the Dick Van Dyke Show, and then they went off to become TV writers.
Right.
I went off to become Dick Van Dyke. It's had to be performing, like Mark says. Mm-hmm. But when the teacher said, "Don't write astronaut or actor," I don't. You know how your brain takes you away from it. Now I can't remember what I wrote, but I know I couldn't write anything but actor. But I must say, in the 7th grade, first day, we had one of those old teachers, the woman with the white hair, like Robert Klein says, the bun and the large black dress, Mrs. O'Neill. It was her last year. And she had us diagramming sentences, they're rough. She was mean to everyone except me. You know why? I had clean fingernails, and was there on time. and she says, and they always put me in the first row, first seat, because I had glasses. That's a brilliant system. I can see better than anybody now with glasses, but they put me in the front. All right, it's stupid schools, I hated it. She says, stand up, you young man, stand up. What do you want to be when you grow up? I'm the first one to speak. And I said, well, I don't know exactly what, but I know I wanted to be in show business. And the whole class laughed. And Mrs. O'Neill, this fierce, difficult teacher, said, don't laugh. He knows what he wants to do.
Wow, beautiful. God
Yeah,
rest her soul.
Yeah, well, one day I'm running off to school. My mother said, in case the teacher asks you, Winston Churchill died today. I'm thinking, Mazet, what's this? Why do I need to know who's Winston Churchill? And
one of the
Mrs.
great
O'Neill.
things about knowing what you want to do, and I just heard it on a different podcast called Founders, which is one of my favorites. He interviewed this clothes designer, and he said that most people are stuck in jobs. They have what they call soul malaise.
Wow.
Malaise of the soul, that they're just unhappy in what they do. And you, when you would bounce into the clubs, you always were bon vivant and happy to be there. You were in the right place at the right time.
Oh, yeah.
I never saw you walk in like, God,
Oh,
I hate
no.
show business.
Oh, no.
No, you were the opposite.
I looked at myself in the mirror before I walked in. Sometimes I put the overcoat over my shoulders like John Barrymore. I wasn't working a day job anymore. And what was I doing now? Now I was able to chase women with impunity and have a couple of bucks in my pocket, stay up all night drinking. I was one of those people you may have heard of who could drink and not have a problem with it. You ever hear of people like that? He doesn't think that's not true. You're really an alcoholic. You just never found out, right? Is that what you think?
That's right.
You piece of shit. Is that what you think?
I'm very happy. When you had a drink in your hand, you always looked like you were right at home.
I belong with a drink in my hand.
You belong with a drink in your hand, a little sport coat. You were prime, baby. You were prime.
Abby Stein, the dear Abby Stein, who I heard Carol Siskin mention, Lowell told me. We miss her. Wonderful gal. And she pulls me aside one night. She says, Hiram, you shouldn't be wearing a polyester jacket. Okay, so I told my mother, Ma, easy on the polyester. Get me something with a real fabric next time. And you remember D.F. Sweedler?
He's still around. He's still working.
Yes, he is, if you call that working. And he always dressed natty. He was natty, a little jacket, a little tie. And somebody said, well, you're the best dressed guy here. If you don't count DF. I said, I'm not counting DF. What does he spend his money on? Girls? For eating in restaurants? Of course he could afford a couple of jackets.
But didn't you drink those drinks with the milk or half and half in it?
No, that was Dennis.
He drank those?
Had White Russians. So I could even tell you what everybody drank and everybody smoked. I drank vodka tonic. Back in the day, vodka tonic. But also, are you still with me there?
Yeah. So you're at the clubs.
Stu Trivax.
Stu Trivax, a good friend of ours, very religious man.
That's right. We would have shots of old granddad with a beer. And John McGowan came by. He said, aren't you a little too young to have Boilermakers? But anyway, nobody knows who these people are. Yes, sir.
So you come to the comic strip. You come to the comic strip. How old are you?
Well, you're leaving out a chunk of change there. I mean, I was very, very. The reason I feel very blessed all the time is that good things kind of happened to me that I didn't make happen. It was the timing of life. And I mean, first I got to start with the parents. I just was truly blessed. What can I tell you? It's not like everything I did was right or they didn't bug me a little, but it's just, I realize now that I'm older and I have a kid, that I broke my mother's heart a few times, and I don't feel good about that because I wish someone would love me as much as her, and that includes my wife too. But didn't you do the joke about I'm not your wife? He said, I know.
I'm not your maid.
I'm not your maid.
Yes, you are.
Go, yes, you are. No, but I did the one where I said, hey, I'm not your mother. And I go, yeah, I know. My mother likes me.
Right. That's right. I did that joke.
The happy news was that I was a very bad student, very bad. I was going to flunk out. There's no way I was going to go to college or anything. How could I ask my father for money when I'm getting D's and F's and everything? They started with open enrollment the year I'm graduating. It ran for only 8 years in the City University of New York. City University of New York, 8 years. And then everybody got mad. All the white people, stop it. You're letting too many poor people into the college. But I wrote in with them, someone who didn't belong. But the trick was they don't keep you there if you don't score. They let you in and give you a chance. That's what open enrollment is. And for me, I turned it into Hiram's acting school. So we're leaving out the part where when I graduated, I had a job at an ambulance company for 7 months. They laid me off. I already had the pictures and resume made up. I bought a newspaper. I went to audition and I got a lead in the play. So it was from there I was going to be a serious actor. After that, lots of jobs. And then Dave Edison, Dave J., Dave Spatalnik, pick a name. He called me up. He said, you ought to come down to the comic strip. You're pretty funny, you know. And he was there. Imagine his chagrin when I went right past him when I got in, you know.
Right.
What are you going to do?
Right.
So that's it. That brings us up to the comic strip. But after that, I gave up the day job. And the first week, I remember calling Peter Bales. You remember him?
I do very well. He's on tour still.
And yeah, he didn't look like himself. Some people kind of change in a big way. I didn't recognize it. And he said, I called him up. I was nervous. I said, I just quit my day job. And I go, oh, how am I going to make enough to live every week? He says, oh, don't worry about it. You MC here, you get $50 here. My rent was only $200. So it was great. I was always very lucky, that's all.
Speaking of your parents, were they supportive when you said you wanted to do that as a career?
Yeah, well, my mother came to see me in a musical in college and applause, you know. So I come out the beginning of the second act, start dancing and singing. And my mother's in the front row with my father. And yeah, after the show, in the show, there's this beautiful gal, I still know her, Sheila O'Shea. Good name, right? 6'1", red hair down to her ass. And my father says, don't bring home the one with the legs. She heard him. She still says that's the funniest thing she ever heard. So my mother says, well, I said, Mom, what do you think? She says, I guess this is what you're going to do. That's as simple as that.
Beautiful.
Because what you said, the way I acted when I walked in the club was whatever came off of me on stage. So that's all.
Right.
And I read that, at the comic strip that Jerry Seinfeld is the one who passed you. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. He passed me. First week I went in. I just talked to him the other day, and I brought that up because of all people who preaches writing and doing it, I said, it's him. But when he was the MC and I went on the first time and he fell in love with me, I could assure you my material wasn't anything special. I was selling it with the personality. And he liked that. And he passed. He says, come back next week if you're just as funny or pass. He liked an expression I made when I said a girl's name and this and that. As the years went on, he became Mr. Writing. And then that special where he shows you every piece of paper you ever wrote on. Well, right. I have a friend, unfortunately, it's got to be like that. I'd rather he be Frank Sinatra.
Right. Well, you embodied your personality on stage was one that I know when I was growing up, I watched the older guys and Jerry, and we were in love with those guys. And you had a little bit of them in you. And we love seeing it. That was one of besides you were enormously funny on stage, you embodied the people that we loved the most. And we still do. We still talk about these guys.
Yeah, I know. But one day it becomes who's writing what, when you're doing it. George Wallace said to me years ago, you don't have to do anything. Just be you. I never forget that. He goes, they're coming to see you.
And which you did, because when you started hitting the sitcoms, you were doing the sitcoms, your personality.
That's what I really always wanted.
I know. And who you are, you were able to put in front of the camera.
Well, I had acting training too, and I watched them my whole life. I was going to say in school when I did poorly, which was all the time, the dean told my mother, take away the TV. That's what he wants the most, take it away. She said, okay. So she said, one show a week you could watch. One show a week. Do you know what I watched? Diane Carroll and Julia. I had a crush on her. But then the next 100 years, you go around Sundays to relatives, and it's all the same for everybody. And you hear from people who say, "Well, what if you don't make it? What are you going to do if you don't make it?"
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what they're talking about. And then when I teamed up with Diana, we were twice as strong. She absolutely had 100% faith in me. So the
Right.
thing is, I'm still very happy with it. Now, of course, I'd be doing a lot better now if I had a show that had been on for 8 years. I'd be wealthy. But my dream, I never said to the Lord, I never said, I want to have a starring thing in a show. I said, I want to just do this show. I want to be at Paramount. I want to be at Warner Brothers. And
Mm-hmm.
all these places I was at and I worked, and they were good parts. They weren't extra parts. They were good parts.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference of a little mazel, that's what mazel is. You trip over a job. That didn't happen. People say you're disappointed. Well, I'm not happy about it. I'm freezing up here now, but I'm very happy that I got to do all these things.
And you did. So let's talk about some of these luminaries and these shows that you worked on.
The first show, I'm out there in LA. We moved out in '87. 3 days out there, we're at the Magic Hotel. It was a giant earthquake. I think it was in Northridge. I don't know which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we found a place to live. It's my wife. I owe it to Diana because she said we got married in '86, and she said next year at this time we'll be in LA. I said, "Are you crazy? Yankee Stadium's down the street. I know everybody. I got nightclubs here. I work. I got money in my pocket. I got family." She said the magic word. She said, "You said you want to be on TV. Well, you can't be on TV if you live in the Bronx." And I just heard, "What? Can't be on TV?" Okay, all right. And sure enough, we were out there a year later, and 5 or 6 months after getting there, I got a pilot on CBS with the great Frank Langella. Does everybody know him?
Sure do.
Lowell, you know him?
Nope.
Frank Langella. He was married. Was he married to Whoopi Goldberg?
Yeah, for a short time. That's not his claim to fame. Dracula on Broadway was his claim to fame. I saw him do that with the cape, and he was a handsome guy. He came out through the window. I heard women swooning in the balcony like it was the Beatles or something. He was very handsome. He's a wonderful actor. But life changes for everybody. It didn't go. It almost went very close, I heard, but it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
If it had gone, he would have made his $50,000 a week to start and stay married with his wife and 2 children. Instead, some people go, okay, it's time to move, And he left for New York and left his family and went back to the theater. And my dear friend Ron Zimmerman, he created that show. And he used to see me. He says, "I know you'd be a star now, but I'd be a millionaire." So
what were some of these shows that you were on? You were on Mad About You?
Oh, Mad About You came later. Years later, Dom Herrera. Have you had him on?
Yes.
Dom Herrera said to me, "Oh, I thought Paul Reiser's your big friend. How come you haven't been on that show?" People would tease me because they were actually, just remember, people are kind of jealous. If you do a lot of what you really like and you look happy doing it, you'll be surprised how some people are affected by that. So he said, how come Paul Reiser hasn't had you on the show? So I arranged a dinner with Paul, and he must have been, producing, writing, directing. His wife just had a baby. It was as hard as it could be. And I made him find time to have dinner with me. This is a long time ago. But he did it, and he sat down. He said, so what's so important that we had to have dinner? That's the first thing he said. I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I just thought I'd see you, blah, blah, blah." And I'm trying to fit, how am I going to fit this in? He finally finishes the main course. Before dessert, he goes to the bathroom. And then I go, "Okay, hi." I have to talk to myself sometimes. "Okay, hi." Right between the eyes, he's getting it. Right between the eyes when he comes back. I'm telling him. And he comes back. I said, "Paul, what's funny? I've been on everybody's show. I haven't been on your show. Wouldn't it be fun to just have me on a show?" I didn't say I need to work. I said it'd be fun. Let's do it sometime, because next week, call comes in, show up for this. That's the one with Mel Brooks with that outtake.
I remember. It's terrific.
Oh, that was great. Well, if he's the funniest man in the world, where does it leave me if I double him up? That's what I say. And the other thing is, with all these shows, it's like Lucy. I'm seen every day somewhere in Cambodia or somewhere. They just don't know my name. That's the difference between the millions of dollars,
And you were on the other episode of Mad About You when you sat next to Paul with his baby on the plane.
Right. So that was
very funny.
They changed the show, and then they didn't work. They had to cut me out. He had me on the following week. No casting people needed. An executive producer can do that anytime. And if they
Right.
don't, they're full of baloney. That's all. Because Larry David used to use me all the time. I even did Sour Grapes, the film that nobody even saw. I did that. He put me on Seinfeld 3 times. Jerry didn't, who came to my house in the Bronx. Larry did. Okay. So everything's great. And then I said, then about a year after I did not Curb Your Enthusiasm, I called him up. Need another job. I said, hey, any chance I can get on the merry-go-round again? You always got Jews yelling at each other. I'd love to come on. So could you use me again? And he says, no, I used you last year. Now, when they tell you that, that's not good, because they could use you all the time. My friend Ray Romano uses his friend John Manfilati all the time.
Yeah.
Season after season of his TV show, in his movies. They're not big parts, but it's enough to become a made man in the union.
So how did you develop a relationship with Larry David in the first place, that he was asking you to come on Seinfeld?
Well, Larry, most of the comics he knew from doing comedy. Larry David, I emceed a Catch Rising Star, so a lot of times they brought him up when he cleared the room, but also I was a Yankee fan, big Yankee fan, and so was he. Right. And so I would always take the L. I'm the only one who came down from north. Everybody came up from Manhattan. I came down and got off the train on the other side of the street, crossed to the stadium, and I would bump into him, just like that. 30,000 people, I'd bump into him. And he got a kick out of me, because we just talked about the Yankees, never talked about anything. And then Susie Sorrow, the comedian, one day calls me up at home. She says, why don't you call Larry up for a job? I said, I don't have anything to say to him. She says, find something. She hangs up.
Mm-hmm.
And I called, and we talked about the Yankees again. I hung up. The next day, someone from the Seinfeld show called me and said, can you work this week? I said, yes, I can. And, of course, I had an agent at the time. And I said, hey, what'd we do right? She says, well, I made a lot of calls. Unbelievable.
Right. So how was it working with Larry?
I think it was just great. You ain't going to have any trouble from me. I never goofed a line or anything. I would look at him and he'd smile. He got a kick out of me. He'd just sort of smile. And being a big Jew also, he had locks every day on the set. I like that.
And I can't imagine that Jerry, once you're on the show, I can't imagine Jerry is not happy to see you.
He was happy to see me, and even happier that he had nothing to do with it.
So you were on season 5 of Seinfeld, so it was already kind of...
Yes, 3 times on season 5. And the first time I check in, I sign in, there's some production assistant at the door. You sign his clipboard. And he's kind of giving me an attitude, like he thinks I'm an extra or something. Okay. And I sit down, and Jerry comes out and sees me and comes over to me and gives me a big hug and a kiss and sits down next to me. Well, this kid almost fainted. He realized he really could have fucked up his job here now. All I got to do is tell him that I didn't say nothing, because I'm so happy when I'm on the set. If you think I was happy walking into the comic strip, Mark, you can only imagine when I walked on the set of a show.
Mm-hmm.
It was just great. But then, Raymond, I helped, gave him a spot at Dangerfields. I had a show at Dangerfields Sunday nights. He wanted to be seen to try out his stuff for Letterman.
That's Ray Romano.
What did I say?
Raymond.
Okay. He's pretty big now. Raymond. And like that. And then I become a working actor. And then it's always fighting to get a better agent. And I came back to New York. I spoke at my old college in the Bronx. Again, the number 4. My whole life was the number 4 elevated train up to Lehman College. And I said to everybody, now look, if you really want to do it, then talk to me. Don't raise your hand and talk to me if you don't 100% want to do it. And one girl stood up and she said, well, I'm not exactly majoring. And I just sit down. I got a big laugh, And this big Puerto Rican kid came up to me after. He goes, I'm your guy. I'm doing it. No one's going to stop me. I will never do anything else but this. I said, you're a winner. You're the guy. So really, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. One of the great nights that I know a bunch of us had was when we came to Las Vegas.
Yes.
When you were starring in the Rat Pack.
Yes.
And one night we show up. I'm with Seinfeld, Michael Richards, Reiser, myself, was
Couple
Larry Miller
hangers-on.
there,
Larry Miller, right?
and there was one other
Mario. his friend
Mario Joyner. That was it. We were all there. So we came to see your show in Vegas.
2 white stretch limos waiting after you get off the private plane.
Right. We took a private jet, and we flew to Vegas. That's the only way to do it, And
Jeez,
we show up. What hotel were you at?
The Desert Inn.
Wow, that was Frank Sinatra's home.
That was great. Oh, it was just great. And also, my wife was there, and she was in the back in a booth with my daughter, who's 5, almost born in a trunk. She's in the back. Seinfeld's got his arm on the booth next to her. Their elbows are touching, and he goes, "Oh, hello." And so she's almost stunned by all of this, but she experienced it early on, and a remarkable kid. But
so you played
full credit.
Joey Bishop in the show?
Yeah, but that was the trick, was that I didn't really. The producer wanted me to just be me. So it was kind of cosmic. Diana said, "This is Hiram Meets the Rat Pack." That's what the show should be called, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't doing Joey Bishop at all. They said, "No, his deadpan would be good if it was a real Joey and a real Sinatra. You got to start this show. We got to make money. We need someone a little faster. So just do whatever you want." I memorized the script. They said, "Don't do those jokes. Do your own thing." And it was the only time in my career a producer said, "Do more. Do more." And then he got the whole cast together and he said, "Anything breaks on stage, anything happens, he's the only one that can ad-lib. Everybody else stand down. He ad-libs."
Well, it was a great night, and you were terrific in the show.
Oh,
Absolutely.
man, but you see, Mark, that was more than stand-up, you see. So that was a big thrill for me, because I'd always wanted to do that too. A show with movement and a little singing, and,
Mm-hmm.
it was like an off-Broadway show, 8 performances a week, a girl who's got a dresser in the back, and.
And you love smoking, so you could smoke in that show.
Smoking. I got to smoke in the show. Do you know that show was so successful in the beginning because they said if you paid extra and sit in the first 5 rows, you could smoke to have the full effect of the old days.
Nightclub.
So
you're one of the few guys, by the way. I mean, I know I used to love smoking. I stopped many years. And you're not smoking anymore, are you?
No, a few years ago, but only because I had a knee replacement, and I figured, who's going to bring me my cigarettes?
There you go. So you're one of the few people that I know whose wife begged them to start smoking again.
That's right. That's right. Can you see me? Because, I can't see you.
I can see you, so don't.
Okay, good. So I'm just bluffing it.
So I know that when you stop smoking, like a lot of you got very angry.
Oh, it was horrible. Horrible. But you know how I quit? I went out and got a lot of patches, and instead of following directions, which I never do, I put patches all over myself. Patches on my head, on my neck, on my arm, my leg. By the time I was through with the surgery and recovering from the surgery, and the patches ran out, I go, I got to get more patches. No, I don't even think I need it anymore. I had kicked it by overloading on nicotine.
So you have a beautiful daughter. She's how old? 20-something now?
28.
28. And we had Kathy Ladman on the show, who adopted a Chinese girl.
Yes. Well, they're all copycats.
I understand.
Sorry, they're not like Millicent. But
so Millicent, who I know real little, used to have the marches in front of your house with the American flags.
Yes, we did that on 4th of July because that Millie was born. They have her in a hospital in China, and the paperwork said July 2nd. So I said, well, if they're just writing it down, let's make it July 4th. And so I'm a very patriotic guy. And
so how did this come about? That you adopted a child from China?
God. My wife, poor thing, she had multiple miscarriages, multiple in a row. And we didn't get married till like 34. And then the doctors, very modern doctors went, no, don't worry. Hey, take your time. You can have a baby anytime. And then when it was time to have a baby, and we were about 40, then we find out that at 38, there's a precipitous drop in the chances of a woman getting pregnant. Really? I said, that's nice. Thanks for telling us. So every one was worse than the other. She would get pregnant each time. Could you imagine? and be pregnant for weeks and celebrate it and everything. But the first one, we came back to New York after I did that pilot to reap the good words of everybody and see family and everybody, and everything was great. And then she had an old walk-up she kept, and I wasn't there, and she carried her bags up the wall. It was not probably too bright, but the doctors, the modern doctors say, yeah, do whatever you want. But that's not true. Grandma's way is usually the best way. How about taking it easy if you're in your 40s, and you're pregnant? But whatever, I came home, and she was in bad shape, and I knew this because I'd worked in an ambulance company after college, my first job. So I called her doctor in Los Angeles from East 21st in New York, and I said, and by the way, the doctor's name is Howie Mandel. That's another story. And I said, let me speak to Dr. Mandel. She's in trouble. She had a miscarriage. He gets on the phone. He says, Hiram, I don't want you to take her in the hospital tonight. It's New Year's Eve. It's a very bad time to go in a hospital. And I was in a tuxedo. I'm going to work in New Jersey. I said, let me just say this. She's white as a sheet. She's ice cold, and she's lost a lot of blood. He says, take her in now. So that's what I learned from the ambulance company. You have to diagnose you have to tell the doctor everything quickly.
Mm-hmm.
He says, well, have the head of the department call me when you get there. So this Indian guy calls the Jewish guy in Beverly Hills, and they have a confab about it. And that was kind of one of the saddest nights of my life. My poor wife, she really was ill. And, Mark, you're like this. Before I left, I was in a tux. Before I leave for the show in New Jersey, I want to see how she's doing and say goodbye. And these two nice little young Filipino girls are nurses. And I said, can I say goodbye? And I am in a tux. And they go, are you a doctor? And I go, no, but I play one on TV, which was true. But they didn't get that joke. And they probably thought I meant, yeah, I'm a doctor from TV. And they open it. They give me the thing to put my arms through. And I walk in the back, and these two kids, the C team was on. They were like using a plunger on her to intubate her. They were gonna kill her. And then they saw me. They said, get him out of here. So the doctor said, do not go on. It was like in The Godfather. I came back later that night from the job, and the hospital was quiet. There were no guards. There was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I should have gone right for the drug cabinet. But I went up to her room, and oh, God. That was rough. Anyway, what were we talking about? I'm sorry.
So did you? Yeah, thank you. Did you go to China?
And then add that 3 more times, and then she's very spiritual too. And she said, I think our daughter is waiting for us in China. Just like that one day. I said, whatever you say, boss. And then she made a promise. We both made a promise to God, and that if you give us a healthy baby, we will give her a Jewish education. So we went to yeshiva with her, which good for about 5 years, and 6 years I had to pull her out. She not terribly happy about the experience, but she said, Dad, didn't you notice I was different? I said, yes, honey, but you're not different about being Jewish. I put a big thing on that. But being of a different race, it's not so easy for the kids, So that's all. So that's it. So you got a girl from China. Oh, man. But I was so lucky. I wanted the agent to call me every day at 4:30. I wanted to be busy all the time. And instead, God gives me this. I'm home for that tea time the little girl wants to do. Mark, you have 3 boys. This is, having a daughter is, we're going to have a little tea set out.
Right, wow. I understand.
Wow. Oh, it is so smart.
Okay, here we are again, Mark Schiff and Lowell Benjamin, and that was the THE Hiram Kasten, and I just loved it. He's a bon vivant type of guy. Hiram's gone through a lot of stuff in his life, and he always seems to be kind of upbeat about it, and that's one of the things I truly love about him.
Yeah, no, it seems like a very philosophical, very well thought out person. So yeah, it seems like life throws a lot of things at you, and it seems like he's pretty well equipped to deal with it. But in part one that we just heard, it was a lot of fun hearing his stories about Larry David on Curb and Seinfeld and stuff like that. So we love those stories, and so glad he had these great experiences and shared the stories with us. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, and then we have coming up, I don't know if it's next week, the week after, we'll have part 2 of Hiram Kasten.
Yep. So thanks everybody for listening. Again, this is You Don't Know Schiff. If you don't already follow us, please head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this and follow us. And we will see you next week.
Take care.